responsibility of the humans to maintain humanity under 500 million people in perpetual balance with nature. In other words, there should be, and if we're going to survive, if we're going to make the Mother Earth, if we're going to make Lilith happy, we have to reduce human population from, what is it, about 7 billion now? We have to find a way of eliminating 6.5 billion people off of the planet so that the owls are happy. That's what we have to do. Very, very interesting. Because there is actually programs in place. A pastor's wife, a very good friend of mine, him and his wife, she works constantly in her state against the measures that are being undertaken in elements of our own government being pushed by the United Nations. She's working against, she introduced the term to me and I said, I've never heard of that before. She said, I want you to look into it. And one day it dawned on me. She was right. This is very scary. It's called rewilding. She has shown me maps and reports that some of these groups have made, asking the question, what if in this certain area of this state, what if all the people were gone? What would happen? And they drew out this scenario, a very well-designed report, had a lot of money put into it, of how nature would thrive without any man living there. It's called rewilding. You see here the website of the Rewilding Institute. There was a series of documentaries put on the Discovery Channel. I think they're owned by the BBC. It started out as like a one-time show and ended up in a sort of a mini-series. It was called Life After People, or something like that. And it was basically showing you what would happen all over the earth in this made-up scenario. What happens if one day all the people were just gone? They just were not there anymore. And it actually talked about, what would happen to cities, what would happen to the dogs, what would happen to all this and that and the other. And all the experts that they had on there saying 30 years from now, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, the earth would actually be so much better if all the pesky humans were gone, if the earth was turned back into a wilderness, if we could just rewild the country. In places where Hurricane Katrina came in through the Gulf Coast there in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and places like that. And all those places that used to be inhabited where the hurricane destroyed the habitation of mankind. Did you know that they're not making any plans of moving people back into some of those areas? They're just going to rewild it so that the owls would be happy. I mentioned the fourth kind. It's based upon J. Allen Hynek. J. Allen Hynek was a scientist hired by the government, I think by the military or something like that, to actually debunk all of the UFO stories. Hynek got involved, started doing the investigating as a scientist with a critical mind, looking at it and saying, I think they're real. I think that we are being visited by some alien group, some alien population. And so it was J. Allen Hynek who designed what's called the encounters. First encounter would be a UFO sighting. Second, a close encounter, the second kind, would be seeing a UFO land. A close encounter of the third kind is an actual human and alien encounter. That's what Steven Spielberg made his movie about. And he actually had J. Allen Hynek in some of the last scenes of the movie as the mothership lands there at Devil's Tower. Then comes along the close encounters of the movie, The Fourth Kind. The fourth kind basically being, we're not just meeting the aliens, they're taking us into their ship. That's what that whole idea was all about, the fourth kind. I remember I've watched Close Encounters. The first time I watched it, I was a kid when it first came out. One of the few times I actually got to go to the movie theaters and I watched this movie, and I was just fascinated. The special effects were unreal for that time area, and it was just a brilliantly made movie. And boy, I really got sucked into it. UFOs. So I started looking at UFOs. That's what really got me going with UFOs, was that movie. And I go back and watch it now, and I get some things. I understand it. Because Close Encounters of the Third Kind is all about the owls coming and meeting us. The owls, these gray aliens with the large, dark eyes. And that's how Steven Spielberg featured them in this film. Now, here's the interesting thing. The aliens are letting the humans know that they want to come down and visit. And so there is, the mothership is going to land at Devil's Tower, Wyoming, and so on. And the military and the government they're sitting around this table, and they're talking about how, they already know where they're going to land and where they're going to meet and everything like that. And they're trying to figure out, because for some reason we don't want any human beings around when these aliens land, when the owls come, because owls don't like it when humans are around. Makes them afraid. They can't stay. And so there's a scene in this movie where they're talking about, well, maybe we could do this, or maybe we could do that. And the guy says something interesting. One of the guys sitting at the table says, we need to figure out a way that we can eliminate every living Christian soul from that area. Very interesting choice of words. So they have a train derailment, toxic gas, and you see everybody leaving, and now there are no human beings except for the ones that they're going to meet for miles around. And now the owls feel like they can come in and nest. And that's what they do. Very interesting. All it takes to get them to leave is the presence of the Son of Man. That's all it takes. It's very, very simple. Remember this, Isaiah 34. There shall the great owl make her nest, and lay and hatch, and gather under her shadow. There shall the vultures also be gathered, every one with her mate. Now look at the very next verse, verse 16. Seek ye out the book of the Lord, and read. No one of these shall fail. None shall want her mate, for my mouth it hath commanded, and his spirit it hath gathered them. There it is, right there. God's saying, in the land, the owls, the vultures, they're going to meet, they're going to mate, they're going to build their nests. Why? Because the absence of the Word of God. You don't want that to happen? Let me tell you how you can avoid it. Seek ye out the book of the Lord. No one of these shall fail, and none shall want her mate. You don't want those devils building a nest in your mind? Turn the light on. Make it absolutely impossible for those spirits to even be around you. You don't want them in your marriage? Turn the light on. Quit doing things privately, away from your spouse. You don't want them in your home? Turn the light of the TV off and turn the light of the Word of God on. You don't want it in your church? Then and if your whole church is given over to the NIV and you feel like God is still leaving you there, then you stand strong for this book and you shine a light. I'll tell you, this is why Rick Warren writes in the Purpose-Driven Church that as a pastor, when you start implementing all these New Age programs in the church and you start running into the old people who are going to give you trouble, you ask them to leave. Why? Because you know when they leave, they're going to take the light bulbs with them. Think about all these churches now that meet, and the sanctuary, for some reason, is no longer lit. Why? The owls love darkness. The dragons love a dark church. See how simple this is? And so if you fit, I don't go into rebellion, don't go into stuff in the flesh. But if you feel like you're in a church and God has led you to stay in that church, then all you have to do is shine the light. They will either ask you to leave Or maybe, just maybe, the owls and the dragons that dwell in that place can't stand it and won't be there anymore. This is why we need the Bible back in our courtrooms and in our schoolhouses. Because sure as we take the Bible and the Ten Commandments out, the killer of our children show up. I hope you've learned something. I hope you've been enlightened about how this stuff operates and how actually simple it is to get the devil out of your life. Turn the light on. This is Pastor Mike Hoggard. Love you. Hope you've enjoyed it. God bless you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.